Hey, I'm Zarina Matcha, and you're watching The Rational Female. I am part of Generation Z. I was born in 1997 in London. While there are many positive things about the world I have grown up in, such as the internet and sufficient central heating, there are many terrible things that I and many others of my generation have inherited, and several of these things can be attributed to feminism. Let's start with marriage and the family unit. I am part of a generation of broken homes. For the first time in Western history in a very long time, possibly ever, it's become rather normal for people to be raised in single-parent families. Rates of divorce in the UK are around 50%. I, like many others my age, come from a family where my parents are separated, and have been since I was in my mid-teens. This culture of separated parents is quite normal. In fact, I'm rather lucky, as when I was a child, I got to experience a loving family. Half my friends growing up were raised by single mothers. I'm also fortunate that, unlike many other Western women of my generation, I have always held a positive relationship with my father, and consider him to be one of the most important people in my life. Feminism, from day one, set out to destroy the family and to destroy marriage. This has always been its goal. It's never been about supporting women's true needs and desires, as ironically, marriage and the family unit was created to support and provide for women. 86% of romance readers are women. Women are more romance-oriented than men by default, and most women crave the stability of a loving family. For most women, being a wife and mother are the most important things in life. Of course, some women are extremely career-oriented, including myself, but throughout human history, career-driven women have always been able to go and do our own thing. Plenty of women, like Cleopatra, Hypatia, and Margaret Thatcher, have held positions of power and not been held back by any patriarchy. The idea of the patriarchy is a feminist invention that comes from Marxist theory. Feminism takes much of its views from Marxist theory, as the goal of Marxism was to destroy the family unit and to destroy marriage, as Marx and Engels viewed marriage as promoting capitalism, even though, oddly enough, marriage existed long before capitalism was invented. Having family values of any sort nowadays is viewed as old-fashioned, traditional, or conservative. However, this is really quite sad. Having family values literally just means valuing your family, as family is where we all come from. It has nothing to do with politics or being conservative. Feminism teaches women to reject the concept of family and promotes this as oppressive to women, which is ludicrous. The most important people in our lives are usually our immediate family members, spouses, children, close friends who become like our extended family, and so on. Now, of course, there are plenty of women and men who don't wish to be married or have children. This is perfectly fine, and those people deserve to have their personal life choices be respected. However, whether we like it or not, for the majority of women, marriage and family are the most important things in life, more important than having a career. Most women would choose being a wife and mother over pursuing a career. This is not because of sexism. This is simply what the average woman desires. Personally, as mentioned, I have always been extremely career-oriented. From a young age, I wanted to write books and play music. If I had to choose between being single and having a career, or being a full-time wife and mother, then I would choose my career. But I am the exception. Most women are not like me. Most women do not desire the life path of being a full-time career woman. It's a very tough life path for most women to follow, and we need to respect the fact that family and marriage are more important for the majority of women than pursuing a career. Of course, as well, plenty of women can indeed be both happily married and pursue a career. Take Marie Curie. She and her husband worked together as scientists. She was not oppressed. She was a career woman who was also happily married. When a man gets married, his wife becomes the most important person in his life. Most men want their wives to be happy, and the idea that a man would oppress his wife and stop her from pursuing a career or higher education to control her is ludicrous. In family-oriented societies, parents typically assist their children in finding a life partner. Parents are supposed to be the purveyors of wisdom and higher knowledge. Children typically look to their parents for guidance. The reason why parents were traditionally involved in helping their children find a life partner was because a parent would see things that a child wouldn't. A father would typically support his daughter in finding a husband to protect and look after her. No good father would allow his daughter to marry a man who was going to oppress her. Nowadays, especially in the modern West, it's practically laughable to even ask one's parents for guidance when it comes to choosing a life partner. Since most people of my generation come from broken families, we often struggle to look to our parents for wisdom and guidance. This is what leads societies to lose their stability, which again is the reason why family is so important. Societies that encourage stable families end up creating stable people. Now, obviously, nobody is completely stable or emotionally mature 100% of the time. We are all human. But generally speaking, the culture around the modern West that lacks these basic foundations is one that sadly has led to an entire generation, mine, struggling with many difficulties, including mental health disorders, excessive hedonism, and the inability to maintain stable long-term relationships. I don't think I've ever met a person of my generation who doesn't or hasn't had some form of depression or anxiety. It's no shock that half of us are being prescribed antidepressants. Instead of order and stability, we have chaos. Of course, not all of this has been exclusively caused by feminism, but feminism has played a massive part in this, particularly post-1960s feminism. Destroying the family and destroying marriage is something feminists set out to do, and they have succeeded. So thank you, feminism, for waging a war on marriage and family values. You won that war. Now, sexual promiscuity is a very uncomfortable topic for most people, and one which unfortunately the Western social zeitgeist doesn't seem to have found a general solution to. I've made a few videos here on this channel discussing casual sex rather openly, because this is something that concerns most modern Western men and women. All across the internet, there are men who put women down for their sexual choices, who call women sluts and whores, and insist that Western women are trash because of our sexual experiences and so on. This is a very sad way to treat women, because it fails to empathize with the fact that our entire culture in the West is currently built around treating sex like it is meaningless. When we constantly put women down and call women sluts and whores, we fail to see what leads to women behaving in this way and how this can be overcome. Being cruel to people and calling people names is never helpful. We also fail to admit the fact that some women, albeit a minority of women, do genuinely enjoy casual sex and should not be made to feel ashamed of their private lifestyle choices. It is not right to shame people for their sexual experiences, but it is also not fair to treat sex like it is entirely meaningless, as unfortunately, women are the ones who lose out more in this circumstance. My general position is that we should treat sex as a bonding experience, as a way for two people to share something. There's no need to insist that everybody waits until they are married, because this then leads to sex becoming something that requires a contract rather than a spontaneous human experience. This also removes the purely meaningless, liberal attitude towards sex that has been and is prevalent among my generation. Perhaps taking all the vulnerability out of sex and turning sex into a purely recreational activity is no good for anybody. Contrary to popular belief, many men don't necessarily enjoy utterly emotionless sex either. It may be enjoyable in the moment, but long-term, this is not a healthy model of sex for stable societies. I do think that the middle ground of treating sex as a bonding experience, as opposed to telling people to wait until marriage or saying that sex means nothing, could be positive for society, because it rejects the Abrahamic view that women are either good girls or whores based on how many sexual partners we have had, but it also rejects the overly liberal attitude towards sex that doesn't really help either men or women in the end. Men don't benefit from only viewing women as mindless sex objects, not that all men or even most men view women in this way. But they don't benefit from putting female virginity on a pedestal either and ascribing virtue to a woman's virginity, because then female virginity becomes a consolation prize. In a way, both perspectives objectify women either as the virtuous good wife or the promiscuous whore. Neither are positive or helpful ways for women to be viewed because they remove the whole woman. When we treat sex as something that is enjoyable, pleasurable, positive, and about two people sharing an experience, both these extremes soften, and the middle ground now becomes healthier for both women and men to enjoy our sexuality without treating sex as a taboo or as something entirely meaningless. In many ways, the sexual revolution of the 1960s was simply a social reaction to the way in which Christianity treated sex. The idea of sex as original sin rather than a normal, healthy human behavior. It's not healthy for women to use sex as leverage over a man for a relationship, nor is it healthy for sex to be treated as something that can be tossed around for the sake of it. No pun intended. Feminism is not really behind the overly libertine attitude towards modern sex. This actually comes from liberalism, and writers like Helen Gurley Brown, who advocated for the very overly liberal attitude towards sex that was portrayed in TV shows like Sex and the City. In many ways, liberal feminism is a misnomer. as feminism is rooted in Marxism, not liberalism. But regardless, feminism has certainly not helped women in this regard, as it has failed massively to portray a healthy model of human sexuality. Many feminists, particularly radical feminists, actually lobbied against heterosexual sex and in favor of political lesbianism. So the entire feminist conversation around sex is very contradictory depending on which school of feminism you are looking at. But because feminism is rooted in the idea that men and women are the same and that gender is a social construct, it does inevitably lead to women thinking that they can behave in the same way that men can. Yet most people know and understand that men and women are different, and that we view sex in a different way, and that men do typically benefit more from casual sex than women. Although again, I don't think that treating sex like it's meaningless is helpful for men either in the long run. But yes, in the moment, of course, men benefit more overall from casual sex than women, as it is easier for most men to have sex without emotional vulnerability. Not that this is necessarily healthy. If you're a man in the comments who wants to disagree with me on this, then please let me know. If we don't want to return to the old ways of forcing people to wait until marriage, then we simply need to create a model of sexuality that treats sex as a bonding experience and for relationships to be born out of sexual desire. After all, it is sexual desire that triggers attraction among two people, and this is very important and perfectly natural and healthy. We cannot neuter women and treat women like we have no sexuality, or like our sexuality is a taboo that should be repressed. But there is equally no need to view women as having nothing more to offer than our bodies, because this obviously is not true. Now, very importantly, let's discuss the effect of feminism on male self-esteem. The way in which feminism has completely belittled and undermined modern Western men is so unfoundedly horrific that I do wonder if every feminist writer and activist should be thrown in prison for the appalling treatment of men under feminism. My generation of men in the West are some of the most unstable, insecure, and disempowered men ever to come. Feminism has been so successful at teaching men to fear and despise their masculinity, suppressing men's desire to be masculine, and teaching men that they are all privileged and all complicit in oppressing women. The more feminists insist that normal, good-hearted men are misogynists, the more this leads to actually misogynistic men, like Elliot Rodgers, who do genuinely dislike women, to come out of the shadows and actually mistreat women. The more we kick a dog, the more it will end up biting back. 90% of men don't dislike women, but 90% of feminists do dislike men. It's a large testament to men that despite the horrors of feminist propaganda shaming masculinity, not taking into account any of men's problems, including domestic violence, rape, physical assault, and unfair judicial treatment, most men still do their part to be kind and gentle towards women. This is largely thanks to the fact that most women are not feminists. It's terrible how feminists make other women look bad by claiming that their movement is a women's movement when it is not. It is a feminist movement. Feminism takes all of the ugly and irrational traits that women have, such as anger, victimhood, and insecurity, and completely manipulates them to turn women into insecure, unhappy females. This is very sad and terrible for the feminine psyche. A woman is supposed to be loved and cherished and viewed positively, rather than put down, shamed, and mistreated. Of course, I sympathize greatly with any woman who is in pain, but feminism uses female pain to fuel their movement. This is why most feminists, when confronted with evidence that contradicts their standpoints, fail to actually argue their points without resorting to emotion. I do understand this, but this comes from what lies underneath feminism, an ideology that was created to divide women against men, rather than to actually empower women. Feminism operates like a religion that indoctrinates women into hating men, and believing that womanhood is something to be despised and feared, rather than valued. If interested, I do have a space on Reddit called Women's Advocates, which is all about supporting and empowering women without being affiliated with feminism. I would really like to, over the next year, orchestrate a new women's movement in the West that promotes and empowers women without being feministic. There's no need for women to behave in such bitter, misandric ways. Women should be working alongside men, not against men. We need a women's movement that can complement the men's movement, both of which can lead to the sexes becoming truly empowered and the best versions of ourselves. So again, thank you feminism for emasculating men and harming women in the process. Thank you for lying to women by telling us that rejecting marriage and viewing men as pigs is somehow positive. Thank you feminists for absolutely nothing. Finally, Feminism has completely harmed my generation when it comes to gender roles. Many people of my generation are rejecting the concept of gender altogether. People are calling themselves non-binary, gender fluid, pangender, and other ridiculous terms. Saying that there are only two genders has become a form of hate speech. This is ludicrous. Feminism since the 1960s has encouraged an attack on gender roles, and boy has it succeeded. Gender roles have nothing to do with politics. They are about the roles that women and men play in society based on our sex. Males and females have different roles based on our physical body and psychology. The culture then reflects what we do with those roles. This is why there have been cultures where women were warriors or where polyandry is or has been practiced. The culture influences how we behave, but we still must acknowledge a basic foundational difference between a man and a woman, such as the fact that men are typically stronger than women are typically more emotion-oriented than men, and etc. I would like to importantly note that I have no issue with people not conforming to traditional gender roles. In fact, I don't think we should force anyone to behave in a certain way. I simply think we need to acknowledge the fact that men and women are different, and that our differences affect our behavior and our lifestyle choices. As mentioned earlier, most women would prefer to be a wife and mother over pursuing a career. If our societies respected this, then we would respect the fact that for most women, motherhood is more important than a job. Career women have a right to be career women, but we represent the minority. It's ironic that in fighting to destroy gender roles, feminism is now eating its own tail. When you claim that gender is a social construct, you end up destroying and erasing the concept of women altogether. Modern feminism in particular is now becoming the systemic erasure of women. Even feminists like Louise Perry, Julie Bindel, and Kathleen Stock are worried about this. Perhaps they should go and read Judith Butler or the epilogue in The Feminine Mystique, when Friedan literally advocates for the destruction of gender roles. This is exactly what the feminists wanted, to destroy relationships between men and women, thus rendering men useless and women obsolete. Rapid onset gender dysphoria is a modern problem that affects more girls than boys. And why wouldn't it? In a culture that teaches women that being a woman is some horribly oppressive social construct, the only rational thing now is for more women to become men. I'm not denying that there are genuine trans people who do suffer from gender dysphoria, and plenty of adults do transition and live healthy, normal lives. But in 60 to 90% of cases, children struggling with gender dysphoria desist into adulthood. We have got to stop tiptoeing around these issues and look at them firmly. Gender is not a social construct. Sex is not bimodal. Trans women are women who are biologically male. These are simple facts. The fact that trans women and trans men can only transition from one to the other literally proves that there are only two genders, or more accurately, two sexes. Older generations of trans people use the medical term transsexual as opposed to transgender, which really makes more sense, as trans people undergoing a sex change are literally altering their sexual functions. But nowadays, saying transsexual is a form of hate speech. Overall, the legacy of feminism is one of women becoming angry and hateful, men becoming frustrated incels, mass family breakdowns, rise in divorce, abortion used as a form of birth control rather than as an unfortunate last resort. I'm not against abortion being legal, by the way, I just don't think it should be used as a form of birth control. Young people being confused about their gender and purpose in life, and on top of all this, the horrendous policing of language and calling anyone who disagrees with you a bigot. Civil rights activists in the 1960s fought for the right to speak freely and voice our truths. Now, among my generation, free speech is being silenced. I'm sure plenty of idiots in the comment section will write angry, childish rhetoric telling me that I'm a bigot and a misogynist and other pathetic tiresome terms. Yet they are the real bigots, bigoted against reason and intellectual diversity. If you say anything negative about Islam, you're an Islamophobe. If you criticize transgender ideology, you're a transphobe. If you criticize Zionism, you're an anti-Semite. If you criticize feminism, you're a misogynist. If you're open about sexuality, you're a whore. Basically, if you say or do the wrong thing at any point, you are a bigot and you should just kill yourself. This is really quite sad, but unfortunately this is the 21st century. No one can say anything anymore without things being taken out of context and used against you. To deny the massive role that feminism has played in the undoing of Western society is to deny reality. Feminism, combined with Marxism, has promoted division instead of diversity, anger instead of love, fear instead of unity, and loneliness instead of family. To the feminists watching this, I say, look upon the world you have helped to create and gaze upon it with an open eye. To hell with feminism! Let us have a better world. A world that celebrates marriage, family, healthy models of sexuality, and positive male and female relations. Let us bring back free speech, honesty, and reason. I'm sick and tired of allowing a small minority of pathetic, angry, spoiled zealots to dominate the conversation and think they have any right to tell me what to do or how to think. Millions of people did not die in March so that we could live in a world where people are not allowed to speak their minds. Feminism has been a massive failure. Let us end this failure and have real women's and men's advocacy and build a better world from the hateful one that the feminists helped to create. Thank you for watching.